turn our attention and unpack in great detail the often, sadly, violent attacks on the LGBTQI+ community here in South Africa. Now, 3 months ago, Chippa Mawane's fiancé was stabbed in the neck in front of their neighbours in Sebokeng, and a 32-year-old gay man in Sasolburg was attacked with a bottle just simply because he was gay. Aldred de Klerk is a senior policing and global security specialist, and he joins us now to talk about the issue of policing and the policing perspective. Hello to you, and I appreciate your time in speaking to us here on eNCA. This is such a massive issue to try and pick up. As far as violent crime is concerned, this surely cannot be viewed as just a violent crime. This is a targeted crime on this community, isn't it? Aldred, hello, it's Gareth Edwards. I'm hoping you can hear me. Let's talk a bit about the issue of policing in the area. Are you still with me? If you are, can you tell me about this kind of crime and how it's being treated differently? Oh, it looks like I may not have Aldred de Klerk. He's a senior policing and global security specialist. In the meantime, let's go over to Gazu. This is Frank Gazu. He's joining us from the Gay and Lesbian Alliance of South Africa. You're the Secretary General. Hello to you, Frank Gazu. Good to have you with us here on eNCA. The reports on murders and attacks against LGBTQI+ is staggering. Just how bad is the situation on the ground, and do you think we're any closer to getting on top of it, Frank Gazu?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having us as CLASA. Well, the situation indeed, we've witnessed not less than 14 murderers since the lockdown started of members of the LGBTQ people who have been killed for only living a life of honesty and a life of queerness and openness. We have a huge problem on the ground, and the ignorance and the arrogance from government and civil society leaders is indeed shocking, to say the least. It saddens us, it hurts us that our own brothers and sisters in the same communities that we live in are pleading ignorance to our plight and our issues.
I want to unpack that ignorance and the arrogance of the ignorance in just a moment, Frank. Let's talk about just the kind of systems in place, the education systems, the PR systems to try and educate those ignorant people who view LGBTQI+ as an outside community. Social media, I'm sure, Frank, does not help at all. We've often seen homophobic comments on social media, and this is a problem we didn't have years ago, but it does make it worse, doesn't it?
No, indeed it does make it worse, particularly when you get people that are who hold a very a high number of following in the social media, also playing part to this hate speech and actually hate crime on social media. It then bothers and asks you, who is going to protect us? Who is going to protect the marginalized community in our society? Because we are a marginalized community, because society doesn't treat us as equals. The mere fact that we have to be protected, have certain amendments or legislation introduced to the Constitution just to protect us as other members of South Africa and a community, that will show you that we are far from actually building this non-genderless society that we are pushing for. But nevertheless, we will soldier on, we will try.
We'll be talking to a policing expert, a senior policing and security specialist in a moment, Frank, but I'd like to get your thoughts on the police. We've heard about this secondary trauma, sometimes it even goes beyond secondary trauma, when victims of LGBTQI+ attacks try and report this. They're victimized again in reporting this to authorities. This is perhaps where we can talk about the ignorance and the arrogance of authorities in this case. Surely we have to get on top of this first.
I didn't quite get your question. I think there's a problem with the signal, but nevertheless, I think the last part that I had, I'll answer on that. I think one, you will recall that the government introduced in 2011, when the former Minister of Correctional Services at the time, Jeff Hadebe, he introduced the National Task Team, the Rapid Task Team, which mainly comprises of the Department of Justice, the police and health and social development. Now, you ask yourself, what is this task team? What has it done so far? Because there are terms of references for the task team in which, in terms of data collection for such cases, in terms of health, in terms of all the issues that you find that affect us as the LGBTQI community. But we've never heard of this task team. I had to research on it so that to know that there is such a task team. And then you ask yourself, seriously speaking, and probably also question the fact that who does this task team comprise of? What have they done? It's there. It's promulgated. It's there. The president has referred to it on numerous occasions. What has it done? Perhaps maybe if we could call them here and for them to answer, what have they done? They haven't done nothing. Government has introduced, in fact, such structures. You look at the hate crimes and hate speech bill. It's there. It was passed in 2018. Why hasn't it been enacted as an act into law?
Frank, we're busy looking at names at the moment for viewers just joining into this discussion as we look at the attacks and murders of the LGBTQI plus communities. These are just some of the names that are under siege in South Africa, and it's so very important that we bring up these names. We show that these are real people who deserve all the recognition and respect that anybody else in the country has, regardless of their sexual orientation. We'll continue to keep these names up. Frank, let me come back to you. I'm going to bring up some tweets in a short while. But first, before we bring that up, let me ask you this. You're talking about government having done some kind of work and moving in the right direction. Our Constitution does protect everyone of varying sexual genders and identifications. But what else can government do? Surely there's a way to lead from the front and be even more forthright, be even more vocal about protecting the LGBTQI plus community.
First and foremost, it would be for the establishment of the LGBTQIA offenders register. It is to sign into law the Prevention and Combating of the Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill of 2018. It's for the presidency to assume accountability and responsibility of the LGBTQI National Task Team from the Department of Justice and Correctional Services to the presidency under the Ministry of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability. So it's also for government, when you talk about, because you mentioned something about programs and stuff like that, is to also adopt the month of October as an LGBT or Pride month, where they line their government programs and activities in line with this month. Because remember that the first Pride March took place in this country in 1990, and that was led by Usamon Goli, who, mind you, is the late ANC stalwart. He led the liberation for us queer people so that we are recognized in our constitution. So he was even arrested and detained with the likes of Mesu and the court. So, you know, to ignore such history and it's actually very sad, because we are part of a voting constituency. We are part of the community, and we need recognitions, like for them to discuss the Facilities Regulation Act of 2004, so that we have gender-neutral toilets in public facilities. It is an issue. You might think that it's a small issue, but that is where these things emanate and they start. Because you find that I'll probably be in a place of leisure or recreation, and I'll go into a toilet, and being as queer as I am, I'm going to get discriminated. And it's very intimidating for me. So if our own government still does not recognize us, then we've got a long way to go. They do, but it's a different thing when they're meant to act on it and make sure that those same policies and programs are implemented. We are there as that watchdog.
Frank, let me ask you about, I mentioned earlier the issue of social media, and we'll bring up those tweets for our viewers a little bit later. How do we get on top of this dissemination of hate speech towards the LGBTQI plus community? Because there doesn't seem to be laws really governing social media, because it's left open to opinion and a space where those with differing views can just be disparaging. But how do you feel we could try and get on top of the issue of social media? Because that's where the ignorance and the arrogance comes from, and it gets disseminated and amplified, doesn't it, through social media?
Yes, indeed. Hate speech does amplify through social media and other forms as well. You'd also, but more particularly, we've seen it on social media. But we wouldn't really be able to stamp it out entirely, I mean, a cancer is a cancer. You know, you can always have treatment, but you can't really wipe it out. So it's the same with social media, but we have ways in which we can actually curb how it's perpetuated. Because when you're looking into the hate crimes and hate speech bill, there are certain provisions in that bill where it says that certain speech is hate, and if you are aware of those perpetrators, you can bring them to book. I think then people will start understanding that this is a serious offense. I cannot just offend someone with the hope that I will get away. Like i.e. the recent case where a celebrity was involved and she was accused. She was able to serve summons over on Twitter.
Yeah, there needs to be more action taken on social media. You can't just say what you want because you feel safe behind your cell phone. Frank, I'm going to say thank you very, very much for your time in speaking to us. Frank Gazu, the Secretary General of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance of South Africa. Let's